Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Chronicle TV. Today's topic is Palestine in international media stories never told. Now, we know that Palestine is often present in the media, especially during times of war. But there's more about Palestine and the Palestinian struggle than Israel instigated conflicts. Are war, conflict, and siege the only way Palestine can be understood or communicated? Is the Palestinian story being told the way it should? And who is telling it, or rather, who should be telling it? Palestine Chronicle TV is hosting two strong voices that advocate authentic Palestinian presence in international media. Journalists and editors Ahmed Alnaouq and Fahya Shalash. I'm also joined by my co-host, Palestine Chronicle Managing Editor, Romana Rubeo. This is Ramzy Baroud. Welcome to Palestine Chronicle TV.
Thank you, Ramzy. Our distinguished guests today are, as you said, Ahmed Alnaouq and Fahya Shalash. Fahya Shalash is a Ramallah-based Palestinian journalist. She graduated from Baroud University in 2008, and she has been working as a reporter and broadcaster ever since. Her articles appeared in several online publications. Ahmed Alnaouq is a London-based Palestinian journalist from Gaza. He is the founder and now the director of We Are Not Numbers, and currently serves as an officer for the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor. Ahmed's writings have been published by the Gulf News, New Arab, and other websites. Welcome tonight to our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
Ahmed, let me start with you. First, how do you view the current representation of Palestine in the media, be it Western or Middle Eastern media? Why do you think that the news regarding Palestine, although often present in media coverage, often leads to misunderstanding, confusion, and disinformation? Whose fault is this?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ramzy, and thank you very much, Romana, for hosting me today. It's my pleasure to be here. Today's topic is very, very important, and actually, it lies in the core of my work as a journalist in Gaza. I assume if we're talking about Western media or Western media coverage on Palestine, and especially in Gaza, where I reported the news in Gaza, we will realize that it's not only biased to Israel, but it's also very unprofessional when it comes to reporting the news in Gaza. I did my master's dissertation when I was in the UK on the Western media coverage on the March of Return, and it surprised me actually to know that not only one book, not two books, not like 10 books have been written about how biased the Western media on Palestine. Many research also have been written about how biased the Western media in Palestine is. But unfortunately, we haven't seen any change when it comes to the Western media on Palestine. When I did my research, when I did my dissertation on the March of Return, I studied the BBC and the New York Times and Fox News coverage of the March of Return and realized that it is very unprofessional, it is very biased to Israel, and it leaves so much of misunderstanding on Palestine, confusion, and disinformation. And unfortunately, this disinformation and misunderstanding and confusion, I believe uh, it was intentionally made in order to deprive the Palestinians of their agency and to not to give the Palestinians the voice that they deserve. And if we want to, unfortunately, if we want to talk about the Western media, the Middle Eastern media on Palestine, if we're talking about English, yes, it's better than the. If we're talking about the English Middle Eastern media, it's better than the Western Middle E- uh, the Western media coverage on Palestine. But recently, after the waves of normalization that has been done recently between Israel and the Gulf, for example, we have seen a little bit of a change, unfortunately. And these Middle Eastern media sometimes they adjust their narrative according to the policies of their governments and the policies of their countries. Unfortunately, it is a little bit better. It's better than the Western media, but it's not really enough. But we are the Palestinians. We're very frustrated with the Western media coverage on Palestine. It has always been biased since the 1948. The Western media has been biased on Palestine, and it's not only me as a Palestinian journalist saying this about the Western media. There has been many other scholars and researchers and journalists who accuse the Western media of being biased to Israel, and accuse the Western media of depriving the Palestinians of their agency and their the agency and the representation. Unfortunately,
Thank you, Ahmed. Romana?
Yes, my next question is to Fahya. Fahya, I would like to ask you, what do you think are the Palestinian stories that need to be told, but they are rarely communicated in the news?
First of all, I would like to thank you all for let me share with you this episode and talk about our life under occupation, because there are a lot of stories, as you said. Maybe when we hear live under occupation, you see every day new stories, and maybe you are surprised how can they live under these circumstances, but we do live, really. For me, as a Palestinian citizen, for an example, I didn't leave West Bank at all for all my life. I'm 35 years old, and I didn't leave West Bank. I never saw our sea, يعني, our sea as Palestinians, our sea or our land. I didn't see them. In 25 years, I didn't reach Jerusalem. Maybe anyone who is foreigner from outside Palestine can reach Jerusalem, and they can go to Ben Gurion Airport and go to Jerusalem and visit. But I can't as a Palestinian citizen. So my right to pray, my right to live, to move between cities, it's not there. I can't live this. There are so many stories, like when you see all the lands in West Bank. We have really beautiful land. We have mountains. We have really good landscape. But when we look at these, they are empty. Why? You ask why. Anyone who comes from outside Palestine says, why everything is empty here? Why do you not? You don't build here. You don't live here. Why? It's all empty because we are not allowed to build here. My father, for example, he has like 100 dunum, or we say this in Arabic. It's a huge space of land where in the western of Ramallah city, but we can't use it because it's near a settlement. We can't use it, unfortunately, and it's threatened to be stolen from us because of the settlers, and they love the area, and this is the daily life for us. Of course, there are many other stories, like the apartheid wall. I covered a lot of stories for families. The apartheid wall divided the homes, the houses of the people in so many villages, and the lands. The land thing is a very important thing in Arabic mind. It's the land. It's all they got. It's the land, just the land. When you say, what do you have? I have land. I have land. So this is our right, or this is our dream, like Arabs or as Palestinians. It's not for us. Yes, I can hear my voice now. But I wanted to say that this thing is really annoying to live with. You can see the mountains, you can see the beautiful land, and you can't be there. Just like that, you can't be there. Maybe it's difficult to understand from someone who doesn't live in Palestine. Sometimes my kids, why we don't go to the sea? Why we don't go to sea? Oh, Mom, we don't have a sea. we do, but we studied in our books that we have sea, we have hills, we I'm sorry, we're not allowed to go anywhere. There are barriers between cities. For example, my husband is from Hebron, and when we go to visit his family, it's like 3 hours journey. But when you look at West Bank, it's small for this. The size is small for this amount of time. Why? Because we have to go round and round to reach Hebron. From Ramallah, it's like this. From Ramallah to Hebron, we have to go this and to reach Hebron, because there are settlements, there are barriers. Yeah, today the soldier wants to stop us. Today he likes to take photos of us. Like what's his mood today? We have to live with it. There are many deeper stories, like for an example, the racism we live in West Bank, because we have settlers, settlers and other villages and cities, Palestinian, of course, villages and cities. We see the racism, the racism policy here in West Bank. We see this like when you go to the entrance of Ramallah, we say it's near or Bet El settlement is near the entrance of Ramallah city. The settlers inside Bet El settlement, they live quietly. They go outside in the yard and they drink a cup of coffee. Very, very calm atmosphere. But for us as Palestinians, we have to stay like 3 hours in the barriers. We have to wait for the soldier to let us go for this checkpoint and to go outside of Ramallah. It's very annoying, you know. And
Farha, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is very important because these are the stories that you don't see. I mean, you have to hear a Palestinian
yes,
talk about them as if they are not even news related, but it's the reality that Palestinians experience every single day of their lives. Now, back to you, Ahmed, with that question. You spoke about the inherent bias in Western media, and you say it goes back to 1948, and indeed, this has always been the story in which Palestine is treated, and the Palestinian rights are treated as inferior, and Israel's needs and securities and all of that treated as the you know the the main mission of Western intervention and Western relations to Palestine and Israel. Do you think that this bias is something that is political? Do you think it's an editorial line bias, or do you think that it is something that is linked to, just the ignorance of the journalists, their lack of awareness? If they knew better, maybe they would have reported better. So, where do you think the problem is here?
This is a very good question, actually. I think the problem lies on both sides, politically and on the journalists and in the editors themselves. As maybe many of us read the book by Edward Said, and he said in this book that Israel, ever since the start of Israel, they have been pouring hundreds of millions of dollars on Hezbollah. And so that actually was a political decision. But when it comes to journalists, I think they also share some kind of the blame, because let me say this to you. When I was in Gaza, I met with some of the journalists who work for big publications, big mainstream publication. I don't want to name them. And I told one of them, he's actually an Arab and he knows what's going on the ground very, very well. And I told him, why do you report this way? Why do you write about Palestine in this way? You're a Palestinian. And he told me that whatever he writes for this publication, they heavily edit that. So they don't allow these journalists to write whatever comes to their mind. So they're bound by some editorial stuff, and we all know that's unbiased. And I believe that it's also the editor's fault, because when I was studying how the New York Times and the BBC and Fox News were reporting the mark of return, not even a first-year student at a university who studies journalism would make mistakes. They made very professional mistakes, especially in the headlines. For example, we all know that the headlines should be in active voice. We should know when someone is killed in Gaza or the West Bank. the editor or the journalist should say who did the action of killing. But when we were discussing and we were reading the news about Palestine, uh, these websites, these publications were often omitting the uh, the the preparator, the Israel who killed the Palestinians. So the blame is on both the journalists, the editors, the journalists for allowing these editors to change their voice, to change their narrative, and also on the editors because they already have like some kind of agenda that they want to impose. And for
Exactly.
Israel,
And I do have a follow-up question to that, Ahmed. But prior to that, I'd like to say, because, we know that most of the raw content that's even, running in Arab, Middle Eastern media, whether in Arabic and English, also comes from agencies and comes from, so the raw material is actually is shaped by bias. And quite often, many media that are supposedly sympathetic to Palestinians don't even understand how bias factors in the everyday report. So the references to the Israeli Defense Forces and the Palestinian militant and this and that, and they do it not even knowing how all of this is actually, you are participating in the shaping of the pro-Israel narrative. So I have a question, and it's for both of you, Ahmed and Fayha, just to be a bit more proactive and think positively. If you were an editor of let's say a UK based mainstream publication, how would you change the coverage of Palestine? And the same question to you, Fayha, in terms of Arabic media, because quite often we see Arabic media reducing Palestine and the Palestinians into a victim, and nothing else. How do we change that and show that Palestine is far more complex than victimhood? If I could start with you, Ahmed, and then we go to Fayha.
well, simply, I would just report the truth. And this is what we want as Palestinians. We want the truth. We don't want these Western media to be biased to the Palestinians and to attack Israel. We want them to tell the truth as they should be. They are bound by legal and professional and ethical responsibility to report the truth as it is. Unfortunately, right now, they don't report the truth. And I would also focus on the origin of the problem that we're suffering from in Palestine. Many, I always believe that the problem with the Western media is not only with what they exclude, it's also what they include in the narrative, and not only what they exclude, but also what they include in their narrative. I think the Western media and how they cover the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is always lacking context. It's always lacking the origin of the problem is never talked about. Many when I came here to the UK, I met with many journalists here and people who study journalism, and they don't know what the origin of the problem between Israel and Palestine. They all think that we are two equal parties who are fighting for lands. They don't know that we're dealing with the problems that all the international community is agreed on. Colonization is wrong. Military occupation is wrong. Collective punishment is wrong. Settlements is illegal under the international law. Swallowing land, killing the Palestinians, killing innocent people is wrong. And all of this is not actually covered in the Western media. So what I would want to change is that for the Western media to report the truth as it is. No more, no less. We don't want them to stand with the Palestinians. We want them to be neutral. And if they become a neutral, they will be like standing with Palestine because Palestine is like a moral and ethical case, and those who oppose it, they lack a professionality because the Palestinian, if they report the news as it is, if they report what's happening on the ground on everyday basis, they will be telling the world what's actually is happening, and that will change the course of the conflict in Israel and Palestine. And we need the Western media to change a lot because Palestine is connected to should be connected to the world, and people who live here in America and the UK, they should know the truth, and they deserve to know the truth. And these Western media, when they cover the Palestinian conflict unprofessionally, they're misleading their people, and this is what actually we want to change. You're muted, Dr. Ramzy.
Silence.
Same question to you, Fayha, especially that what Ahmed discussed earlier about how normalization began Yeah, I mean, we know that Middle Eastern and Arab media already had problems to begin with, and one of them is what I raised earlier: this whole issue of, the reductionism of Palestine and the Palestinians as a place of victimhood and victimization, and very little human agency, very little, very little about the culture and the centrality of Palestinian culture. But now with normalization, things are actually getting worse. How would you change this if you were an Arab editor operating within that landscape?
Okay, first of all, I agree with what all Ahmed said. For us, like Palestinians, we like to, or for at least for us journalists, Palestinian journalists, we would like to keep specific words or keywords for this conflict. Uh, because I will give you an example to understand what I'm saying. We have the word settler, we have the word Israeli man, we have the word raper, some kinds of media call them. But in the Western media or the other world, they don't know what we mean. That the settler is the same person as Israeli man, and there's come the confusion, and there's a conflict there. So we have to use specific words for our situation as Palestinians, because and really, I blame the official media. The official media, sometimes there is a gunshot in Jenin, and they say Israeli forces killed a young man, and then the Israeli media puts his photo, he's armed, and they say he's a terrorism. But why we called him a young man? He's a resistant. For us as Palestinians, we say he's a resistant. But why the official media said, oh, they killed a young man? He was just walking around his house. So we have to adapt the truth here in Palestine. As Palestinians, we have to adapt the truth. We have to put it under our eyes and say, yes, this and that happened. Because we have the right to be mad sometimes, because this settler has stolen our land, and now we have the right to be mad. Sometimes they say, no, we have too many sides of stories in Palestine, unfortunately. So this is the conflict here in our story, that we can't agree all on specific terminology. We have to adapt, and we have to learn how to talk about our story or our situation here under occupation. Second, maybe I have to focus, if I were an editor, maybe I have to focus on a humanitarian story, because the world cannot always understand or get the policies or the political issues. No, there's a mother uh, lost her son. There's a farmer lost his land. There's a family lost her house, its house. So it's very good for us as journalists to talk about these things. So maybe I think that what I'm going to write about in English, I like to humanitarian issues. We have to live with this all the time. So I would like to make a copy of my life and what I see here in West Bank, and try to deliver this picture to you, to deliver this photo to the world, how I live. For example, me and my children, how we lived when they exploded our house, our house door. When they detained my husband at 3 a.m. So it's a very difficult situation. I had to cry every night. My kids, I didn't know how to deal with them. My 3 years old son, he told me, why dad is not with us? I told him he was detained. What is detained? He didn't understand. So now he's like 11 years old. Now he knows, and now he hates who detained my husband. So this is how the generations are built here in Palestine. So this thing is very important to focus on. And maybe among the normalization stream, I think we have a lot of effort that we have to do to just to show our life, our difficult situation of our everyday, this conflict that we live, and how the details. I like to focus on details. How the details are very important for us, because maybe because I'm a mother of three. Maybe I like to go to this side. I see this beautiful picture of three Palestinian girls, and it's very great to start from there. The new generation, what they say, how do they say, how do they see our life under occupation? This is very good to start, because the Western world or the world, they just see now the kids, the new generations, and how it will deliver the picture of our life.
And regarding this, Fahya, the stories that you contributed to the Palestine Chronicle, for example, are centered around strong Palestinian women. We just mentioned Palestinian women and mothers. And I would like to show a part of a short video that we produced based on your story, which is centered on a Palestinian mother specifically. So just a part of the video. Raja sat quietly in her living room, staring at her son's picture on the wall. She loved the way he smiled and said she sees him in every corner of the house. But now she only has painful memories, knowing his body is detained by Israeli occupation forces in an Israeli morgue. It was around dawn on September 23, 2021, when Youssef Subor insisted on leaving the house as Israeli soldiers were storming the city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. His mother begged him not to go, but he kissed her forehead and left for good. Not only. So, Fahya, of course, our readers can watch the rest of the video on our YouTube channel and read your very touching story on the Palestine Chronicle. But I would like to ask you, do you think that Palestinian women are fairly represented in Western mainstream media? And what are the biggest obstacles that you face in your work, and what keeps you going?
First of all, if they are uh, represented well in the media, they would have lived a better life. So they're not represented well. This woman Raja, I know her personally. She's very young, but maybe because of all the sorrow she had in her life, she looked like she's an old lady, but she's very young. This is one example of our life as women here. Just her dream or just her hope is to get her son's body out of the Israeli morgue. Can you imagine how it's how cruelty this have? يعني she says that maybe in the rest of the story, maybe in the video, I don't know. She says that she hopes they can let her see her son. Of course, he was shot dead before more than a year. And until now, she didn't see him. She didn't see the body. They didn't allow her. And she doesn't know where is he now. She said, if they allowed me to go to see him, I will bring a blanket with me to cover him, to cover his cold body. And we were all in tears after she said that. It's very, very, it's very sad. And there are not just Raja. There are too many mothers like this, like more than one, like 120 mothers that their sons are in the morgue. This is one side of the story. Other sides, as Palestinian women, we have a lot of conflicts or a lot of obstacles in our lives. One of them, or maybe it's all related to the Israeli occupation, because it's very dangerous to be a journalist. You know about all the world heard about Shirin Abu Akleh, so it's very hard to work like a journalist in the field. Maybe I don't work in the field, but I call and I work online, and I see a lot of cruel pictures. I saw a lot of cruel stories. Sometimes when I'm on the phone with a prisoner's family or a martyr's family, I go in tears just on the phone. We are very emotional, women, very emotional. So very hard to work like a journalist, a female journalist in Palestine. The second thing that Israeli forces, maybe they put on the democracy mask, and they care for women's right. No, this is not at all what happens here. They hit the Palestinian girls, the Palestinian journalists, female journalists, because they are maybe weaker in physical and power, or strong. They hit them. They curse them in very in different cases. I saw that in my eyes. And they also put obstacles in front of them. Me, as an example, I was taken for interrogation for Israeli forces, and they asked about my husband and about my kids. This all threatens my work. And they told me that if you continue to work as a journalist, and you show us as we are criminals, we can make you stop working. So this is the least thing that I can say about what happens with us as Palestinian women. And in the media, the Palestinian women, no, they are very. There's something unfair about them, because for example, I covered the story of Aisha Rabi. She's a mother, a Palestinian mother. She was traveling with her husband, and they were laughing in the car. They were talking about they were coming from their daughter's house, and they're laughing, and they're going to their house in Salfit. Suddenly, a settler throws a stone to the car and break the window, and it hits her head, and she died. Now, where is Aisha Rabi file? Nowhere. She's just dead. No one talks about her. No one says we have to sue the settler, and he's out there. I'm positive that he's like living his complete life. If maybe some people can say, okay, she was in the danger, she was in the street, there were tensions between settlers and Palestinians. But I'm going to tell you about the mother Riham Dawabshi. She was in the middle of her house, in the middle of her village, and she was burned to death by a settler when he threw Molotov cocktails, we call them, to her house. So where is the justice here? Where is the Palestinian woman? I hear all the time, because I watch the Western media. I hear all the time about women and making the rights equal with men, but we don't have rights at all. We don't want to be equal. We have rights in the first place. We don't live like any other country. يعني it's very I don't know how to or I don't know if the picture is delivered for you, but this is like one side of our lives as
Absolutely, Fayha. And this is the whole point of this discussion, and this is the whole point of much of what has been written and said about the subject, and the books and volumes that have been produced, yet somehow they are constantly ignored. What Fayha is saying right now, it's we're not even talking about bias, we're not even talking about language, we're talking about people being threatened in their everyday existence. I think we just reported on that a few days ago, Romana, at the Palestine Chronicle, about the number of journalists who have been killed in Palestine since the year 2000. I think it was something like
Yeah,
75,
it's a primary
77.
number. Yeah,
So
over
Shireen Abu Akli and the just her murder for the incredible job and mission that she has served throughout these years is actually a continuation of a legacy of murdering the most vital and critical Palestinian voices in the media. So we're talking about people getting killed, people getting wounded, shot, beaten up, have their equipments confiscated, deported, silenced, intimidated. So this is the reality under which Palestinian journalists have to operate. Yet at the same time, it is Israel that is getting the lion's share of positive coverage in the media. We need to change that, and we know that we have some very important initiative. And I'm going to ask Ahmed and Fayha, and it's going to be our last question for today, despite the fact that this is a very, very enlightening and important conversation. What are the initiatives that are being taken or being initiated? Ahmed, we know that you are the director of We Are Not Numbers, one of the most important and vital organizations operating in Palestine and as of late in also in Lebanon. Tell us more about the organization itself, but also about the larger context of the mission that this organization is serving.
Yes. So, in light of everything that we have said today, in light of the bias in the Western media and the deprivation of the Palestinian voice and the misrepresentation that we're dealing with in the Western media, We Are Not Numbers came out. It came out in 2014 after the last, not the last, after the war in 2014 that Israel launched against Gaza, in which 2,300 Palestinians were killed. And these people in every every one of these people, the 2,300 Palestinians, everyone has a story that has to be told, that deserve to be told. And the Muslim media, we have seen how the Muslim media failed these Palestinians. They never told their stories. So the idea of We Are Not Numbers started after this war in order to give the Palestinians the voice and the agency that they need in order to write their stories. And we're talking about Palestinians themselves writing their stories. We Are Not Numbers, we decided that we do not want to wait for the Western media to come and to report the news in Palestine. We do not want the Western media to come and write features about life in Gaza and death in Gaza and the blockade and the siege and all of these difficulties that we're facing in Gaza. We decided in We Are Not Numbers that it is time for us as Palestinian writers, young writers from Gaza and the West Bank and Lebanon and everywhere, to write our own stories in our own language and share it with the world in English. The idea of We Are Not Numbers started with training young writers from Gaza who write in English. And to your surprise, there are many, many, many thousands of Palestinian young people who are very talented, who are very distinguished, who speak fluent English, and they have a voice and they have stories that deserve to be told. So the idea was to train these writers to write their stories in English and then to link them with international mentors and authors to help them write their stories. So we started in 2014. We trained hundreds, around 400 writers right now, willing them with international mentors, amazing writers from all around the world, who all believed that the Palestinian people deserve to have a chance to write their stories and to tell their stories to the world. These mentors, amazing mentors, linked with our writers, they coached them, they edit their stories, and now we're publishing our stories in our website. The power of We Are Not Numbers is that it is not a news agency, it's not a news publication, it is a storytelling project that empowers young writers from Gaza and the West Bank and Lebanon and Palestinians from diaspora to write their own stories. So now we are talking about victims themselves writing their stories, sometimes in a form of storytelling, sometimes in a form of a poem, sometimes in form of featuring stories and in news. Thank you, Palestine Chronicle, for like this collaboration that you have with We Are Not Numbers, in which you publish stories for We Are Not Numbers. So I believe We Are Not Numbers came to light in order to challenge the Western media narrative, the stereotypes that we have in the Western media about Palestine, and it came to empower the Palestinians to write their own stories in their own language, without filtering, without editing, without changing, without depriving them of the agency. It is the writers themselves who decide what to write and how to write, and we just publish their stories and we empower their voices. And I refuse to say that We give the Palestinians voices because we have voices. The problem is that we have been struggling with an international media, Western media, that deprives the Palestinians with their voices. It obliterates their voices. It takes away their agency. But in We Are Not Numbers, we are just giving our writers, our young writers, the means to write their personal stories and to publish that in English, in a language that the world understands. So this is our.
Absolutely. And it is so important to mention. I mean, personally, I have spent years chasing after Western media, but also Middle Eastern and Arab and sympathetic Muslim media and so forth, trying to get them to tell the story of Palestine the way it should be told. And honestly, I think the, it's far more rewarding for us to actually invest in our own media and empower our own voices. In the long run, this is far more important. And I think We Are Not Numbers is the perfect model for this. And again, we are very, very lucky at the Palestine Chronicle for having had the chance and continue on a regular basis to host stories, beautifully written, well written stories by young journalists from Palestine affiliated with We Are Not Numbers. Please do go to the website of We Are Not Numbers. Yeah, I think it's wearenotnumbers.org, if I remember that correctly, Ahmed,
Yes.
and learn more about the project, support the project in any way possible, and spread the word on this project, because it's your support, it's your encouragement that allows these young people to carry on with their work as they have for years. My final question is to you, Fayha. Are there initiatives in the West Bank, civil society initiatives by journalists, by young people, by whomever, that's trying to provide some sort of a focused Palestinian narrative, especially describing the events that are developing throughout the West Bank at the moment?
Yes, of course, we are struggling as Palestinian media. We are struggling under the Israeli strong media because it has all the support from Western countries. So we have to struggle to make our own stories. To make them reach to the world. There are, for example, NGOs, these organizations, they have a lot of efforts for many kinds of things in Palestine, but they are also threatened by Israeli forces, and the offices were raided by Israeli soldiers recently, and maybe you heard about some kinds of they arrested a lot of head of these organizations, and including women too. We like Khitam As-Sa'afin. She was arrested because she had an organization, and I would also
Like this could
like yes, I'm here. Okay, I thought someone was talking. So maybe I would like to add something to this pile of stories that Birzeit University, because I live in Birzeit and it's very near to me. It's like. In recent years, 2 years, in the recent 2 years, they have arrested like nine female students because they had a little activities, like student activities. One of them was Layan Kayed. She was arrested. Can you imagine for what? For organizing a visit to an elderly house or home, and on Christmas. And this was like an activity. It was forbidden for Palestinians to make. So in front of this, we have to make our own struggle, and we have to make initiatives like you said, Mr. Baroud, and we really are continuing, because all this threatening and all this strong power of Israeli forces upon us, it makes us really stronger, and makes us because I had my own experience of this threatening and of all this crazy situation. Because of this, I was determined to write in English and to make the world see what we suffer and what we have to live with. So it's not here in Arabic, we say the strike that doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And of course, that's what's happening with us Palestinians. That's why we are living now under this situation, and we have really to focus more on the stories that are like the title of this episode, the stories that are buried, or the stories that no one knows about it. Every day they say about, they speak about martyrs and prisoners, and it's very important, of course, to remind about these stories. But there is something or some side of story which is very buried and no one knows about. Like I say, we can't go, we can't build, we can't travel, we can't. Sometimes we envy the Gazans people because they have no occupation. I know they are under the siege, but they have a life at least, and they can go anywhere in Gaza. But we can't, unfortunately. Now, of course, we can't reach Jenin, and it's not very far. Yani, Ramallah is in the middle, and all the cities is around it, but we can't go anywhere. So we have to focus on this. I was going to just say about something. We have like boards in the entrances of the Palestinian villages and cities. It's like red boards, and the Israeli forces wrote on it. This is a dangerous area for you settlers to go in there. And you can't go there, and you will take the responsibility if you go in there. So we are like monsters. If you go there, it's very dangerous. What can we say about our other land? What can we say if we go like near or maybe far, 2 meters far from a settlement? We can get shot. So who is the monster now? And this is very crazy situation that we live under. This is the racism policy I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Indeed, is that the degree of dehumanization, that the Palestinians are the source of danger, yet and the settlers are in constant state of defending themselves, yet somehow it's the Palestinians who are constantly being killed, and it's the settlers who are expanding their settlements and living the good life. Um, this is a very, very important and critical conversation. Unfortunately, we will have to stop here because of time. But before we go, just want to remind our readers and viewers that they can follow Fayha's writings on the Palestine Chronicle. We are very proud to have her as a regular contributor to PalestineChronicle.com, and also Ahmed, thank you very much. We Are Not Numbers does absolutely fabulous work. And now you can also enjoy the writings of reporters with We Are Not Numbers at the Palestine Chronicle as well. Romana, I'm going to leave the last word to you.
Yes, thank you so much to our guests. It was such an enlightening discussion, and it was very important even for journalists like me who have to, take advice from Palestinian journalists to constantly correct the misrepresentations of Palestine and Palestinian people in the media. So I would like to remind to our readers that we are gonna put all the links in the comment section below. And of course, as you said, they can read Ahmed, We Are Not Numbers, and Fahya's stories in the Palestine Chronicle. And thank you very much, Ramzy, for this discussion.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.